in your Greatness by Design report, you wrote, or you and your colleagues wrote, teaching has become an increasingly unattractive job in California. The numbers of teachers who've been given credentials is plummeting. The number of students enrolling in teacher preparation programs is plummeting. You have many different proposals in this Greatness by Design report. What do you see as the key reforms that you think need to happen? Let's just start in terms of trying to make teaching a little more of an attractive profession.
Well, I think that the context in California is known to everyone here. We've had fewer and fewer resources to work with. People working in the most under-resourced school districts with the highest need populations have watched their class sizes get larger and larger, their working conditions get poorer and poorer. In general, teaching is not the most attractive profession in the United States. In contrast to the highest achieving countries, people here typically earn about 60% of what another college graduate earns, whereas it's at least equivalent in high achieving nations. They typically get almost no support for their preparation, as opposed to Finland or Singapore or Korea, where you would come into a high quality program completely funded by government funds with a stipend or a salary while you're training. You would go into a well-resourced, equitably funded school with textbooks and computers and materials and all of those things, with a lot of time to collaborate with your colleagues, typically 10 to 20 hours a week. In those countries, for teachers to collaborate with one another and learn and do lesson study and action research and so on, and extensive, readily available professional development in some places like Singapore, a career ladder sort of available for those who want to become master teachers or specialists in curriculum or assessment or school leaders, et cetera. We have none of those things in place for teaching in California. We had some incentives for coming into the profession at one time. The governor's fellowships, the CalT grants have shrunk significantly, the Apple loans. As I've said before, the salaries are so disparate and class sizes are large and supports are few. And on top of that, we have an accountability system that, like others in the country, has been substantially a test and punish system. Which was reinforced by the incentives under No Child Left Behind. And tests that most teachers will tell you are so narrow that they make it harder to do the most important kinds of teaching if you're trying to raise the scores on the test. So what would we need to do? We need to address all of those things. We need to be sure that as we equalize funding and make it more equitable, that we also equalize salaries and working conditions so that it's not a disparate experience for a teacher to go teach in Palo Alto or East Palo Alto or any number of other places that you can name and we need to begin to move the teacher education system towards one that really supports people in having the knowledge and skills they want to have. The most important thing teachers want to do is make a difference with their kids. And it's not a profession you go into if money is your main driver. And if you did go into teaching for that reason, you probably didn't, look ahead, read the balance sheet, and there should be some question about your general, intelligence. Most teachers are there because they want to do a good job. The way you do a good job, in addition to having the supports, is having the knowledge and skills. And that knowledge is really sophisticated. When you want to know how to teach kids to engage in higher order thinking and critical problem solving and so on, you want to do that for a range of students with different language backgrounds in your classroom and different learning styles and strategies and cultural backgrounds and so on. That's a very broad and deep kind of knowledge base. California is also the only state in the country which puts a cap on teacher education. There's a 1-year limit on how much training you can get. to come into the classroom. It's moved largely to the graduate level. We have a few undergraduate programs that are there wending their way through a thicket of regulations. So we've got to make it possible for people to get the knowledge and skills that they need, to get the clinical experiences that they need. That's going to mean both improving the caliber of preparation, getting rid of the artificial regulations and caps that are currently there, putting back in place the incentives for people to go into high-need fields, math, physical science, special education, teaching of English learners, and go into high-need communities with those service scholarships back in place that replicate a little bit of what other countries have. And as we help districts learn how to use the additional resources that we hope and anticipate will be coming into the system, we need to be sure that they're thinking about the fact that teaching is a team sport. I just met with one of our STEP graduates recently who's changing jobs and looking for career advice. And what she said, just like most of our students and graduates, is where can I find a collaborative setting where I'll have the opportunity to work with other teachers? That matters about as much as anything to most teachers. That means we've got to build the time in, we've got to find ways to build those supports in place, and we need the kind of evaluation systems, which I'm sure we'll come back to, that are envisioned in work that Joan's been doing and others, to think about how you build a supportive, learning-oriented, collaborative system of support and evaluation.
And just let me ask you quickly, Linda, where do these proposals, like the one to change the limits on how long the teacher preparation program should be, where is that decision being made? Would that be at the Credentialing Commission, State Board of Education, legislature? And what kind of timeline are we talking about in terms of making some of these reforms happen?
Well, that particular one happens to be a legislative decision, and there is some language floating around in the legislature now to do that, to basically lift the cap and let people figure out how to use the undergraduate years more productively. You know, if you've decided you want to be a teacher, go ahead. Let's get busy. You know, keeping the content expectations that we need. We don't want to let content to get diluted, but we want pedagogical opportunities to become available. So that is legislative. Other things are regulatory. So the CTC has been busy raising standards, making plans to begin to use accreditation both to lift the floor on programs, but also to identify excellent programs so others can learn from them. So that we have this kind of, Pedro Noguera talked earlier about, let's hold up the places that are doing good work so that others can learn from that. We need to do that in the teaching space as well, and some of that is both regulatory and available for those who have the vision and the imagination to begin to do that without even regulatory change.